There is only one player in the league playing like Jaime Jaquez Jr. who isn't Jaime Jaquez Jr., and I bet you can't guess who it is. But before that, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another edition of After the Buzzer. I am your host, Couper Moorhead, and today we're talking about one of the breakout stories of the early season, one of the comeback stories of the early season, and of course an early candidate for Sixth Man of the Year. Of course we're talking about Jaime Jaquez Jr. and what we are seeing from him so far. It makes you want to say, yeah, he's this new guy. He's completely reformed his game, that sort of a thing. But that's not really the case. He's more just of a refined, maximized version of the guy that we've seen already. The strengths that Jaime already has are being maximized within the season. If you're painting for gold, if you're out there with Ethan Hawke and White Fang in Alaska, or was it California? One of the two. If you're out there and if what you're painting for was Jaime's game, all that loose sediment is all returned to the earth, and what you're left with is pure Jaime, just the gold, right? As we've talked about before, watch our video on it if you haven't. We did it a little while ago. It's a nice deep dive. But the Heat are running the most unique offense in the entire league, one of the most unique offenses we've ever seen. They're leading the league in pace, of course, but they've also cut down their pick and rolls and handoffs to historically low levels. We're talking the previous low level and then half of that, right? That's how few pick and rolls and handoffs are running. And they've transitioned to a read and react, space the ball out, get the ball going downhill quickly, interior attacks, that sort of a game. And you really could not design a better system for Jaime specifically. He came into the league taking everyone by surprise with his physical drives. And after an underwhelming sophomore year that was plagued by injuries and maladies and the roster and flex, where it was kind of hard to find his place in the rotation and what part of his game they were going to be able to get to consistently, now he could just get to spend entire games hunting for the quickest and earliest opportunities to drive with that physicality. There aren't many guys better putting his shoulder down, putting his shoulder into people's chests, and the Heat are giving him ample amount of space and opportunity to do that, to just bump his way, create airspace, and finish at the rim and in the upper paint, where he's got the whole package of floaters, hooks, push shots, off the glass, through the net, everything you want. The finishing is all there. The result, of course, is career highs across the board. Career highs, points, rebounds, assists, efficiency. It's all there. It is a true third-year breakout, leap, step forward, whatever you want to call it. It's there. Now, to the comparison point that we were talking about, there's a rabbit hole here. Join me, please, on this journey. Here's a sampling of all the players leading the league in points in the paint. Points in the paint. We're talking Nikola Jokic, Jalen Duren, Ivica Zubac, Cade Cunningham, Lauri Markkanen, Alperen Şengün, a host of other names in the top 10, top 20. And there's Jaime right there, right in the middle of all those names, averaging over 12 points per game in the paint. Now, of course, all those names and all those points in the paint are not made the same. A Duren or a Zubac, they get catches in the paint. They get dunks. They get alley-oops. They're very much outside or inside-out players, whereas Jaime is more of an outside-in. We're talking about drives. We're talking about the off-the-dribble game. So that's where we got to look at the drives. Total volume of drives is purely most drives in the league, and the leaders in those, it's a completely different list. You've got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, an MVP, Denny Avdia, Devin Booker, Cade Cunningham, again, Cade's got a unique attacking game, Jaylen Brown, Tyrese Maxey, Pascal Siakam. What do all of those guys have in common? They all shoot the three ball, right? To varying degrees, different styles, off the dribble, off the catch, coming off the screen. We'll get to that in a sec. All those guys have the threat of the three ball to help set up their drives. They have guys step up on their shot off screens. They have guys closing out hard, don't want to give them a catch and shoot. They all have various advantages created by their shot to get downhill. Well, as part of that, they also have screens. Screens facilitates all kinds of downhill action. That's why it's a pick-and-roll league by and large. Space pick-and-roll has been the biggest thing in the round for 15, 17, 18 years. And, Jaime only uses 3 screens per game. That's practically nothing, right? Just 3. A lot of guys average 50, okay? It's nothing. And to the point, where there's so few screens that most of his drives are actually logged as isolations. That's how the player tracking cameras pick them up. Drives are, outside 20 feet into 10 feet, or whatever the distinction is. I forget what it is exactly. But off the dribble, one-on-one, those are isolation attacks. And now, who leads the league in isolations? Some of the same names, some different ones. You still have SGA, you still have Jaylen Brown, Booker, Siakam. But now Şengün is back from the points in the paint list. You also have Julius Randle, Paolo Banchero. Jimmy Butler's downhill physicality is a good comp, but he's not as high in points in the paint or drives, and teams often play up on his shot. So, seeing some cross-pollination, but, different names on different lists. It's all over the place. Jaime is on all of them. We're not done. The rabbit hole goes deeper. The next layer, okay? Jaime is at the top of the league, very top of the league, in rim attempts in transition. Or if you want to slice the apple differently, horizontally, vertically, drives in the first 8 seconds of the shot clock. Same idea. Off, all those early attacks, sometimes off makes from the other team. It's been a huge part of Miami's offense. Now, again, many of the same names in the list we've given so far are going to show up in these. But, of all those top 10s, top 20s, Denny Avdia takes 6 threes a game. Cade Cunningham, Jaylen Brown, all take 5-6 threes a game. Jalen Johnson takes about 3, but he doesn't have the drive volume, so he doesn't show up on that list. Even Franz Wagner, who's a downhill guy, kind of like Jaime, he takes 5 threes a game. Now there's the next level, kind of the final level of all of this, which is the playmaking. Now, we are seeing teams, and we'll talk about this more, teams start to load up on Jaime in transition, put multiple bodies in front of him, tilt the floor, the defense, towards him to keep him from getting downhill. And when I asked Spo about this at practice recently, he brought it back to the playmaking, to all the reads Jaime, developed and was seeing himself making or not making on film. He watched a ton of film this summer on himself, tried to simplify. What are the simple reads I can make to get my teammates advantages? Now, here's what Spo had to say about that.
I think that the steps that he's been making this year are going to be important, as teams start to put that second and third defender in front of him more often. And that step that I'm talking about is the playmaking and getting off the ball sometimes early, sometimes, getting in the paint, collapsing the defense, and making the appropriate play behind him. That's the play that's open a lot.
Okay, let's put this all together. We have a guy who is top 10, top 20 at worst, but almost always closer to top 5 or 10 than anything else. He's up there in points in the paint, right? He's up there in drives, isolations. He doesn't use screens. His assist rate has skyrocketed over 5 per game. He doesn't take many threes at all, so he doesn't have that benefit to set up his attacking game. But he still finishes well at the rim and in the upper paint, okay? And through contact. So who's the only other guy in the league who fits that profile? I'll let you take a guess. Maybe you put it together by now, but I'll give you 3 more seconds. 3, 2. The answer is in Milwaukee. It's Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? Of course, we're not saying Jaime is Giannis. You hear that name, your mind starts going in different directions. I get it. But we're not saying they're the same player, and we're only talking about the offensive side of the ball. But really all you got to do to see it, to see the comparison, is watch Milwaukee and then watch Miami. Watch those guys come down in transition and see how teams build a wall, right, in front of them with 2 guys, with 3 guys, with guys arms out. They're basically holding hands. It's like a game of Red Rover. You are not getting it through here, especially early in transition. It's the same thing Miami has done to Giannis for years to pretty good effect most of the time, and now you are seeing teams utilize that same concept, building a wall against Jaime. And remember, Giannis is huge, right? He's one of the most physically imposing guys in the league. Jaime is 6'6", a little different. And then sure enough, just so you don't think I'm making this up, just on pure stats, just a simple stats comparison search, nothing complicated. Here are the guys making 52% of their shots on the floor, 5 assists per game, while taking 2 or fewer threes a game. It's Giannis and it's Jaime. Those are the only 2 options. So it's pretty solid. Now, of course, there's always caveats. We're always going to look at the other side of the coin. And there's 2 here that are directly linked. First, we mentioned the part of the Giannis comparison is that Jaime is attacking the paint with the dribble, but not taking many threes, and that's because the three isn't really falling. He's in the 20 percentage area, right? He's below 30. And that makes it kind of all the more impressive that he's still getting to the paint and still finishing as much in there as he does, like Giannis, without the three ball. They don't have the advantages of those hard closeout situations. If they did, they'd probably be scoring even more in the paint. But it can be a little tricky fitting low volume, low percentage shooters, one or the other, into certain lineups. Jaime's best lineups coming off the bench has been, with Ware, Bam, or Jovic as the center. All those guys are taking threes. Those are all 5-out lineups now, and Spo has been hammering, spacing. So one of the main things the Heat are focused on this year, because they're not running a lot of sets, there's not a lot of, there's not pick and rolls, not a lot of screens. It's spacing, precision, timing, get everybody the right amount of space so they can attack downhill, right? If that means you got to cut and just get out of the way, do a sacrifice cut, if it makes room for a guy like Jaime to get downhill, you got to do it for him. But as part of that, teams are continuing also to do, what they've done the previous 2 years. In addition to playing a lot of zone, we've seen a lot of zone, which that's a sign of respect. That's a compliment. If a team is zoning you, they don't want to man-to-man you. Zoning against a guy like Jaime, putting bodies in front of him, either early help or just creating a shield around the paint. They are doing that to keep a guy like Jaime from getting downhill. But they are also doing what they've done before, which is putting centers on Jaime, which is something teams around the league tend to find guys who are low-volume shooters, put a center on them. Center can sag off, right? And then he can sit in the paint and he can focus on rim protection without having to worry about making a long closeout to a shooter. And, they're doing that to Jaime. We've seen quite a bit of it. And, they do get to sag off. Or if Jaime wants to attack, they can sit kind of free throw line extended, almost like it's drop coverage, right, in a pick and roll, and just be ready, be the bigger guy, be ready with size, strength, hands up, make Jaime come to you. That makes the finishes tougher. Of course, it's a lot easier to finish, against a 6'5" guy in transition than versus a 7'1" guy at the rim in the half court, if the defense in the zone or the whatever coverage they have gets to be set up. Now, flip side of that is that Jaime leads the league in drives against the zone. He has a handful of drives against centers. The efficiency comes down a little bit, but it's still a very strong number. And the good news is that being defended by centers is something you can manipulate, because you get to kind of choose where the opponent's size is on the floor. They still have to worry about your drives. And once you beat that guy, or once you get him where you want someone else can attack maybe on the weak side after a swing, get off the ball, then there's no one else at the rim to protect it. And you have higher efficiency layups, shots in the paint. So, look, teams are adjusting. As Spo mentioned, it's a great sign of respect to both the Heat's new offense and to Jaime and his style that they are already adjusting now. The more attention that Jaime draws, the better it will be for everyone around him, as long as he keeps making those simple playmaking reads. Sometimes, you got to get the ball early. Sometimes the guy behind you, get it back to the trailer after an early attack. Find the simple reads, find where the defense is tilted away from, because that's an advantage for somebody else. But second, third, fourth time through the league, it's going to look a little bit different for both Jaime, for Miami. That's the counters. That's what the whole league is. If you are doing something well, if you're doing something new, if you're a breakout player, the league is going to find ways to try and stop you. That's what we're seeing right now. Some success for other teams, but in a lot of ways, Miami is still getting to the same process, still getting to the same shots. And so is Jaime. He's still getting to his downhill game against just about everybody. So, look, what Jaime is doing is remarkable. He's had help from his coach and from his team designing the system that fits him so well. But in terms of, a bounce back year from what had happened his sophomore year, where his game was just getting lost in Miami's rotation, you would be hard-pressed to find a story quite like this. And then there's a part where it's just an incredibly unique player with an incredibly unique style, where only one other player, Giannis Antetokounmpo, really fits the same profile, and he's just a much bigger guy, right? So I don't think you could ask for a better start to the season for Jaime. There's no reason to think he won't feature heavily into the Sixth Man of the Year conversation, and when we get to the final months of the year. And until then, we are just going to enjoy the ride, enjoy watching him, enjoy watching the league adjust to him, and then seeing how he and the team adjust to that, because that's where we all go from here after this initial breakout. But rest assured, this is for real. The process behind what Jaime is doing is for real, and this is pretty cool to see. So that's all for today. Thank you for joining another edition of After the Buzzer. I'm your host, Couper Moorhead. Remember to like and subscribe on YouTube. Get those notifications for all future content. And hit me up in the comments. If there's anything else you want to talk about related to Jaime, related to the offense, related to anything else on the team, drop them in the comments on this video. I will respond. We can just continue our conversations and dialogue about the Heat. Until then, take care. Goodbye. I'll see you later.